hot springs? Shirou asked. Yeah. Do you want to try out going to the hot springs when you're done with the dishes? Well, sure, but why are you asking me this? Well, I figured that with all of the work that you've been doing lately, I figured that you should take a dip in the hot springs once a while. Is that okay with you? Shirou thought about Ritsuka's question for a moment and gave his reply. Sure. I could come to the hot springs when I am done with the dishes. To be honest, my body does feel sore in some areas recently, even though I am a servant, and we should not feel pain. That's funny if you ask me. Yeah. Anyways, check out the hot springs when you are done with the dishes. I swear, the experience over there is incredibly good. Ritsuka said with a smile on his face as he soon began to leave the cafeteria, leaving Shirou alone. As Shirou was alone in the cafeteria, washing the dishes, a few thoughts came into his head. The hot springs, huh? It's been a while since I've been to one during my travels, might as well give it a go then. Soon, Shirou was done washing the dishes and headed out from the cafeteria and headed towards his room. Alright, this should be the hallway master said where the hot springs are. Shirou thought as he was following the directions Ritsuka gave him earlier. Right now, Shirou was holding a towel and a bar of soap as he was heading towards the hot springs. Soon, he arrived at the hot springs. The appearance of the hot springs itself has two openings with curtains hanging from each of them. One of them said boy while the other said girl. And in the middle between the doors was a counter lady behind a countertop. This must be the place, he thought as he went up to the countertop. Hello, he greeted. Hello. I take it that you want to get into the hot springs? The counter lady asked. Yes. Very well. For an adult servant, the price would be 100,000 QP. Shirou then handed the counter lady 100,000 QP, which she accepted. Thank you. Have a wonderful time in the hot springs. Shirou then went through the boys' door and headed inside the changing room. As he did, there were many male servants that he recognized who were changing out of their clothes. One of which was Sieg. Hey there Shirou, Sieg greeted. Hey there Sieg. Are you here for the hot springs as well? Shirou asked. Yeah. I've never seen or heard of hot springs before, so this is my first time here. Plus, Master recommended me to go to here if my body feels sore. I see. Guess you're here for the same reason then. Eh? You're here because your body is sore too, Shirou? Yeah. Recently, it felt like my body is sore in some places, so I figured that a trip to the hot springs might help. I see. Is there something I should expect from going into the hot springs? Or do I just dive in? Well, no. Rather, you need to take a shower before heading into the hot springs first. Sieg was confused. Why? Is there something wrong with the water of the hot springs? Shirou let out a chuckle. No. Rather, it's more of etiquette. Back in my home country, hot springs were viewed as a tradition, so going into the hot springs has a few rules actually. Is that so? Sieg asked, interested in the etiquette of going into a hot spring. Yeah. Do you want to tell you the rules about it? Sieg nodded in reply. Yes. Alright. First rule is that before entering into the hot springs, you need to wash and rinse yourself first before entering the hot springs. Entering the hot springs while still dirty or with traces of soap on the body is socially unacceptable. There should be stools, faucets, wooden buckets, and toiletries such as soap and shampoo, so you do not have to worry about bringing your own soap. However, you need to bring your own towel, Shirou said. I see. Anything else? Yes. After you are done cleaning yourself up, make sure to wear your towel around your waist before heading into the hot springs and getting out of the hot springs. I see. Thanks for the insight, Shirou. No problem, Sieg. Anyways, we might want to hurry before the hot springs get crowded. Why yes. And Shirou and Sieg headed towards the showers first to wash and rinse themselves. As they arrived at the showers, Sieg was amazed that so many people were in the showers, washing and rinsing themselves. Shirou noticed Sieg's amazement. Yeah. I forgot to mention this, but hot springs are quite popular among people. It's not a surprise to see this many people here. You can say that again. Soon, Shirou and Sieg began to sit down on one of the stools and began to wash and rinse themselves. As they did, they would begin to have conversations about various stuff. Really? That's why Mordred calls you mother? Sieg asked as Shirou was done recalling the story about his meeting with the Knights of the Round. Yeah. Thanks to Merlin and a bit of thinking from Mordred, I was deemed to be Mordred's mother. And furthermore, you want to know what the Knights of the Round call me? What? Queen Shirou. At that moment, Sieg felt like he was about to laugh, but held it in. Huh? They called you Queen Shirou? Yes. And ever since that day, they've been calling me by that title. Why though? Well, I am Arturia and her counterparts Scabbard and Consort. I guess in their terms, that makes them the new queen. I see. Still though, queens are usually women. To think you would be called Queen Shirou, that is something I have never heard of. I mean, you being Mordred's mother was one thing, but this? Unbelievable. Shirou let out a chuckle. Well, this is the moonlit world and Chaldea we're talking about here. Anything unnormal is common around here. Believe me, I know, he said as he was getting off from the stool he was sitting on. I can see that, Sieg said as he got off from the stool he was sitting on. Anyways, let's move on, since we're done already. Shirou and Sieg then exited the showers and headed towards the hot springs. As they did, Sieg was amazed with the scenery in front of him. Even though it was inside, the scenery in front of him looked like it was outside, completed with a bamboo wall, many pools of hot water, stones that surrounded the pools of hot water, and shrubbery in some areas. Wow, so this is what the hot springs look like. Sieg said with amazement. Yeah, Shirou said with a smile on his face. Soon, Shirou and Sieg headed into one of the hot springs. As they did, Sieg felt a sense of warmth going through his body. Wow. So, this is what a hot spring feels like. It is not like going into the showers. You can actually feel the water going through your body. He thought as he felt relieved. Shirou soon joined Sieg into the hot spring he was in earlier. So, you're feeling better here? He asked. Yeah. All the fatigue and stress that's been building up in my body is going away at this moment, Sieg replied as he raised his arms. Man, the hot springs feel great here. I wish I could stay here forever. Shirou let out a chuckle. I wouldn't recommend that, Sieg, unless you want your skin to look so wrinkly. Eh? Really? Staying here too long makes your skin so wrinkly? Sieg asked as he was surprised that staying in the hot springs makes the skin all wrinkly. Yeah. Man. Being in the hot springs is the best. Arturia Lily yelled as he raised her hands in the air. Yeah. The hot springs is a reliable source for relaxation of the body and the mind, Arturia replied as she headed into the hot springs Ishtar was in. The hot springs, huh? It's been a long time since I've been to them. Arturia Alter said. You're right. With all the missions Master has been taking us to, it cannot be helped, Lancer Arturia said. Exactly. Who knows what will happen next? Lancer Arturia Alter said. So right now, let's enjoy this moment, Ruler Arturia said. So, this is what hot springs feel like, it feels amazing. Castor Arturia said with a sigh of relief. Indeed. The hot springs is a source of relaxation, Archer Arturia said. And furthermore, it actually helps us, writer Arturia Alter said. Exactly. I've never felt so relaxed in my life as Santa Arturia Alter said. Wah, this is so relaxing, Mysterious Heroine XX said with a huge sigh of relief. Yeah. I could use a day off like this occasionally, Mysterious Heroine X said. So do I. Mysterious Heroine X Alter said. Meanwhile, with Ishtar and her counterparts. Ouch. I know that it is supposed to sting, but man. That hurts. Ishtar yelled as she let some of her wounds seep into the water. Ereshkigal let out a sigh. You know, maybe you should stop fighting against Astria, she said. Sorry, but she still pisses both of us off. Especially that attitude of hers. Writer Ishtar replied. Meanwhile with Parvati, BB, and her sisters. Hey Passion Lip. Move over. Melt Lilith said. Sorry. Passion Lip as she replied, but her claws were in the way, making it hard for her to move. Will you two be quiet? Senpai is behind that wall over there, and I want to hear what's he talking about. BB ranted. Big sister. Please calm down. King Proteus said. Parvati let out a sigh. Will all of you calm down there? Yeah. You're annoying me, said. Meanwhile, with Emiya and her counterparts. Emiya? Is there something wrong? Miyu asked. It's not fair. Emiya muttered. What is? Kuro asked. Well, it's all of those girls that are after Oniai-chan. I mean, come on. There is the King of Knights and her counterparts. Rin-san and her counterparts. Luvia-san. And finally, Sakura-san and her counterparts. Furthermore, there is also the Emperor of Rome and her counterparts, Jeanne d'Arc's evil counterpart, Okita Tsuji and her counterpart, and Musashi in the mix. Just how many girls Oniai-chan attracted? Emiya ranted. Kuro let out a sigh. Well, that's one of Oniai-chan's charms I suppose, she said. And let's not mention the fact that some of the girls have giant, well, you know. Saitonai let out a sigh. Not this again. Meanwhile with Astria. Wow, today was quite exhausting. Especially after that fight with that useless goddess. She thought as she took a deep breath in the hot springs she was in. As she did, she then took a glance at the bamboo wall. Shirou's on that other side of the wall. Wait, what am I thinking? I should not peek on him. That's not how a proper lady should act. Meanwhile with Nero and her counterparts. Omu. The hot springs are amazing as usual. Nero said as she raised her hands in the water. Indeed. What a pleasant experience to have here. Caster Nero said in agreement with her saber counterpart. Exactly. Such a hot bath like this is worthy of my praise. Bride Nero said. As she did, she splashed some water on her counterparts. Nero let out a smirk. Oh. You want to challenge me? Sure. Why not? Bride Nero replied. Omu. I shall join in as well. Caster Nero said. And so, Nero and her counterparts began to have a water fight against each other. Meanwhile with Jeanne d'Arc and her counterparts. TCH, why did this have to happen? Jeanne d'Arc Alter thought as she was in a position she did not want to be with in her entire life. And that situation would be sharing the hot springs with her unaltered counterpart and her younger Santa counterpart. Is there something wrong, older me? Jeanne d'Arc Alter, Santa Lily asked. Jeanne d'Arc Alter let out a sigh. Well, for starters, why do I have to share the hot springs with you too, she yelled. Jeanne d'Arc let out a giggle. Isn't it obvious? We're going to spend time together as sisters. Still though? Why are doing it like this? Jean Dark Alter argued. Because this way is more effective. And you are going to like it, whatever you like it or not, Jean Dark said with a creepy smile. Jean Dark Alter gulped. Meanwhile with Okita and her counterpart. Phew. A day in the hot springs after training feels good, Okita said with a sigh of relief. Indeed. With all that training, my body feels sore. Okita Alter replied. Okita let out a chuckle. Isn't that because of all of that sleeping you did earlier? Okita Alter let out a pout. Hey. Don't make fun of me. Okita chuckled again. Hey, might I join in with you too? A new voice said. Okita and Okita Alter turned around to see Musashi, who was wearing a bath towel. Ah. Musashi-san. Okita said. Hey there Musashi. Are you here for the hot springs too? Okita Alter asked. Musashi nodded happily. Yeah. I heard from Master that the hot springs are good here. So, I decided to come here. May I join you too? Sure, Okita and Okita Alter replied in unison. Alright. Musashi then lightly jumped into the hot springs, splashing water all over Okita and Okita Alter. Musashi! Okita yelled as she and her altered counterpart got wet from the splash damage. Meanwhile, back with Shirou and Sieg. And that's how Jean found out that Astolfo is a man, Sieg said as he was done finishing a story. Shirou felt like he was about to laugh, but held it in. So, let me get this straight. The way Jean Dark found out about Astolfo being a man is she saw Astolfo getting out of the shower naked? And Astolfo didn't mind? Yes. Wow. And all this time, I thought Astolfo was a girl, because of the way he dresses. But this changes everything, Shirou said with a shocked look on his face. Yeah. I can't say that I blame you though. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some other servants thought he was a girl. Me neither. For a moment, Shirou and Sieg ended the conversation as they couldn't think of a topic to continue it. They then just went deeper into the water, letting it submerge them even more. You know. It's been a long time since I've ever felt so relaxed like this, Sieg said with a sigh of relief. You think so? Yeah. I mean, after being in a great Holy Grail war, there are times where I wished I could enjoy a moment like this. You and me both. During my travels when I was alive, I rarely went to the hot springs, so being here again gives me nostalgia. I can see that, and right now, I feel like sleeping here, Sieg jokingly said. Shirou let out a chuckle. As he did, he heard voices coming out from the girls' side of the hot springs. Speaking of which, I wonder what's going on over there. Hey! What are you doing? X whispered to her altered counterpart. Isn't it obvious? I'm making a tiny hole in the wall. That way, I can see what Shirou is up to, X Alter replied. XX was slightly alarmed at what X Alter said. Are you crazy? He'll notice, you know. Relax. I'm making the hole small enough for him to not see. Plus, I'm making the hole in a location he won't be able to see. Now leave me alone, I've got a hole to make, X Alter said as she began to make a small hole with her sword. As she was done making the hole, she then peeked into it, seeing Shirou on the men's side of the hot springs. Meanwhile, Arturia noticed X Alter's behavior at the bamboo wall. What are you doing over there? She asked. HM? Peeking at Shirou. Why? X Alter replied. Arturia was alarmed at X Alter's answer. Are you serious? You're peeking on Shirou, she yelled, gathering everyone else's attention. What? I just want to see what's he doing on the other side of the bamboo wall. That's not the point. Arturia yelled. HM? Did I hear something about peeking on Shirou? Arturia Alter asked. Arturia let out a sigh. Not you too. She muttered. Move over. I want to see, Arturia Alter said. So do I. Arturia Lily said. Me too, Lancer Arturia said. Indeed. It's the king's responsibility to make sure the queen is okay, Lancer Arturia Alter said. Exactly, Ruler Arturia said. As much as I don't want to admit it, she does make a good point, Archer Arturia said. She's right though. Nothing will not harm Shirou on my watch, Writer Arturia Alter said. As such, we shall watch over him, Santa Arturia Alter said. I don't know what's going on here. Castor Arturia said. Soon, Arturia and her counterparts were arguing at the whole Altar made, gathering the attention of the other girls. HM? What's this about peeking on my praetor? Nero asked. Arturia and her counterparts let out a collective groan. Great. Now she's getting involved. Umu. A peeking hole that allows me to show my praetor. I shall have the glory to look in the hole. Castor Nero said. So do I. Bride Nero said. Soon Arturia, her counterparts, Nero, and her counterparts began to argue against each other while everyone else watched. Wow. They're fighting over a peephole looking at Emiya Shirou? Ishtar, her rider counterpart, and Ereshkigal thought. A peephole to look at senpai? That's not fair. Parvati, BB, and her sisters thought. A peephole to look at Onii-chan? Okay, that's it. Ilya, Kuro, Saitonai, and Miyu thought in unison as they got out from the hot springs they were in. How dare she? A peephole to look at Shirou, that's unacceptable. Astria thought as she got out of the hot springs she was in. Oh my. Looks like there's quite the commotion over there, Jean Dark said. Yeah. All because of a stupid peephole. Jean Dark Alter said. Eh? A peephole? Is that bad? Jean Dark Alter, Santa Lily asked. Okita let out a sigh. Really? They're all fighting over a peephole, she said with disappointment in her voice. HM? A peephole? Okita Alter asked. Okita turned to her altered counterpart and asked, You didn't hear? Nope. I fell asleep earlier. Okita sighed again. Meanwhile, Musashi was getting excited at the fight that was happening between Arturia, her counterparts, Nero, and her counterparts. That looks exciting. I'm going to join in, she exclaimed as she got out of the hot springs she was sharing with Okita and her altered counterpart and headed towards where the group of girls were. However, when she did, the bamboo wall could not take any more pressure. And it fell. Well then, guess I'll be getting out of the hot springs now. How about you, Sieg? Shirou asked. No thanks. I'll stay here a bit longer, Sieg replied. Alright then. Soon, Shirou began to raise himself from the hot springs. As he did, he heard a loud sound nearby. He turned around and what he saw completely shocked both him and Sieg when he turned around as well. In front of them was a broken bamboo wall, Arturia and her counterparts, Nero and her counterparts, Musashi, Ishtar and her counterparts, Parvati, BB and her sisters, Ilya and her counterparts, Jean Dark and her counterparts, and Okita and her counterpart. For a moment, nothing happened between the groups, until the fireworks began. Emiya-kun, you idiot. Onii-chan, you pervert. Seek-kun, don't look. Shirou/senpai/my praetor/Shirou-san/Shirou-kun/Shirou. And in an instant, Shirou was hit with so many things, while Sieg quickly dodged and headed underwater. Afterwards, the hot springs was closed for a while, because of the damages that happened afterwards.